Hey folks, welcome back to Penalty Box Woodshop. Today we're going to turn this old desk into something nice and usable. Reclaiming furniture doesn't have to be some big job that requires hours and hours of work. If you're able to pick the right piece, it can be an easy and enjoyable project. To get this project started, I've fixed the busted areas and tightened up the joints that had loosened up over time. I used some wood glue and clamps to hold everything together. I also replaced some of the old stripped out flathead screws with some new screws, and then I added some brad nails where needed. To match the rest of the piece, I used dowels to fill the pre-drilled screw holes, and I cut them a little proud of the surface with my dovetail saw. With a little bit of hand sanding, I was able to sand the dowels down so that they were uniform with the existing ones on the piece. After that, I measured the width, depth, and height that was needed for the missing drawer. When getting these measurements, be sure to account for the thickness of the board that you're going to use for the drawer front. At the table saw, I cut the front, back, and two side pieces for my drawer out of 3/4 inch plywood. I used the miter saw to cut each of these boards to length. To ensure that both the front and back pieces were the same length, I lined them up and cut them at the same time. Over the table saw, I set my blade at 1/4 inch high and made a cut on each piece at 1/4 inch from the bottom edge. Then I adjusted the fence and I made a cut on one piece until a 1/4 inch piece of plywood fit in the groove. This will be for the bottom drawer. Once my fence was in the correct position, I made the cut on both side pieces and the front piece. Before cutting the back piece, I raised the blade just above the height of the board, and then I made a cut without moving the fence. Cutting the back piece to this height will allow you to slide the bottom of the drawer into place after the drawer is assembled. Next, I got out my favorite pocket hole jig and made 2 to 3 pocket holes on each end of the front and back pieces. The jig that I'm using here is from Armor Tool, and I'll put a direct link to it and all the other tools that I've used in this video down in the description section below if you want to check them out. If the drawer is assembled and cut correctly, the back piece should be the same height as the bottom of the groove on the other boards. Once the drawer was secured with pocket hole screws, I checked for square and measured for the bottom panel. When measuring from the back, measure from the inside of the front piece to the outside of the back piece and then add 1/4 inch. This will ensure that the bottom panel is long enough to secure to the back piece once it's slid into the grooves. After sliding the bottom panel into the grooves, I used brad nails to secure it into place. Now that the drawer is completed and fits into place, I measured for the drawer front. I used some 3/4 inch ash that I had lying around the shop and cut it 1/4 inch shy of the measurements. This is so that the drawer front will have about 1/8 of an inch gap all the way around the opening. With some assistance of my shop helper, I got the desk outside and got it ready to be painted. I removed the drawer and decided to paint the drawer front separately before installing it. For this quick little project, I decided to use my Graco 360 airless sprayer to paint it. It's pretty easy to use and cleanup is quick. After a few coats with the sprayer and some light hand sanding, this desk was starting to look pretty good. I applied some CA glue to the back of the drawer front and some accelerator to the drawer. Using playing cards to make sure that the gap was even, I glued the drawer front in place. I think that I used about 4 playing cards in each stack to get this gap perfect. After a few seconds, the glue was dried and it was time to measure for the handles. I drilled holes for 2 equally spaced handles and then I pulled the drawer out so I could work on it. Using my countersink bit, I pre-drilled holes from the inside and then secured the drawer front with screws. Once the drawer front was secured, I noticed that my screws that came with the handles were a little short, so I used a 1/2 inch drill bit and countersunk the holes from the inside. Now that the handles are secured and the drawer is in place, the desk is ready to go in the house. As you can see, with just a few simple steps, this old piece of junk was transformed into a usable piece of furniture. If you found this video helpful or enjoyable, please let me know by hitting the thumbs up button. If you want to see more of my videos, please consider subscribing to my channel and hitting the bell button to be alerted when I post a new one. I'm Jesse with Penalty Box Woodshop. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.